Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Modern Mom's Roadmap to Balance podcast. Our guest today is Laura Sinclair, and Laura believes that you and your business deserve to be seen. With over a decade of experience building digital marketing strategies for some of the world's biggest brands, Laura has dedicated her life's work to teaching women how to grow their business and take big leaps into their entrepreneurial dreams through her podcast, courses, and events. Laura went from corporate dropout to multi-six-figure business owner. Her journey ranges from public relations, sports marketing, sponsorship marketing, and social media management to nutrition coach, gym owner, women's event host, community builder, author, podcast host, investor, and CEO. Laura is a mom of two. She's a CEO of the boutique social media marketing agency, the LJ Social Agency, and the host of This Mother Means Business podcast. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me. I know it's it's quite the journey reading in my bio. And when someone asks me to write a bio, I'm like, how much do you want to know? So thank you for reading that. It's always fun to hear.
Yes. No, thank you for sharing. I really do enjoy hearing people's, especially moms, journeys, because I think a lot of the times what happens is when we're talking about a bio or we're just trying to get to know them, we just hear about this one piece and it can really like create this belief that, oh, they did that thing and it just went so well for them, they kept going. When the reality is, although yes, that can happen, most of the time people jump and move to figure out what is best for them and their families and their businesses.
Totally. And some of those things went really well and then stopped being aligned for me. And then other things didn't go so well. And so it's definitely, I love that I love that you say that, because I think, when we talk about motherhood, we talk about entrepreneurship or like even career, right? Like whatever it is that you want to do to fill your time. I think there's so many different seasons and different needs. My kids are 6 and 3, and the things that they need now are a lot different than they were when they were 3 and 1 or 3 and a newborn. And I know it's going to be different again when they're, 6 and 9. And so I don't know. I feel like that's part of it for me. I'm always going to be a lifelong learner, a lifelong shapeshifter, probably as far as how I'm going to spend my time. And I'm totally okay with that.
That's awesome. I definitely feel the same way about myself and the directions that I go. And sometimes I will like second guess myself and think like, do I have to pick one? Or the people who are saying, oh, you should just pick one. And I do understand that it's better to give your attention to one thing at a time, but I don't just want to do one thing for the rest of my life. I want to do lots of things. I'm a multi-passionate person.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, but before we continue diving into this topic, with the question that I always ask everyone, what is your definition of a balanced life?
Yeah, mine, when I think about balance, what I actually like start to think about is like my own physical body and like how I feel in my physical body. So I'm a person that really feels when I'm anxious or I'm sad, I like feel it in my body. It makes me feel like I'm walking around with an open chest wound. And so for me, when I think about balance, I think about like it's actually calm. It's like relaxation in my body. It's just like a sense of ease. And I think, and I know we're going to dive into this, but balance is very much a moving target. It's like, some people will tell you that it's not achievable. Some people try to go for more harmony over balance. But when I think about the word balance, like what I want that to look like, regardless of what's happening on the outside in the world, and in my house and all those things, it's like that sense of just like ease and calm within myself is really what comes up for me.
Yes, I love that physical feeling, thinking about how you want to feel within your physical body.
Yeah. And that's so many things, right? That's like stress. That's my mental health. It's what am I putting into my body? Is how much energy do I have? Like there's so many things. But for me, when I think about the word balance and like what I want I think about what I want it to feel like, less so what it looks like. And the feeling is what comes up for me as like just how it would feel how it feels in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. How has that definition changed for you over time? So you have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. Do you feel like that
Yeah.
has changed, since maybe just having your first child?
Oh my gosh, yes. Balance wasn't something that I even like thought was possible or something that I thought
Mm,
was achievable. And I tend to shy away from the word balance a little. I'm more of like a harmony girl, but I think like at the end
mm,
of the day we're just talking about semantics. It's like how
yeah.
do you feel in that moment? And so, when I think about when I had my daughter, I owned a brick and mortar gym at the time, and there was no
Mm,
such thing as balance. I was in this headspace where I was business or bust, right? Like this
mm.
business was going to work. And it didn't matter what I sacrificed, if it was my marriage, my own mental health, time with my baby, like
Wow.
none of that. It was just like I was in this
Mm-hmm.
headspace where I had to be quote unquote successful in the business that I was running at the
Mm.
time. And certainly through a lot of therapy, a lot of inner work, a lot of
Yeah.
exploration, really coming to this place of like what understanding what really matters for me has shifted, right? And I think
Mm.
that's a big part in getting really clear on where my priorities are has helped me
Yeah.
achieve, whether you call it balance or harmony or ease, however you want to call it. I think being clear on my real priorities in my life is something that's really
Mm.
given me that.
Yeah. What has helped you to like get clear on your priorities? I know that you mentioned like you've been to therapy and a lot of inner work,
Mhm.
but was there some kind of like catalyst or something that happened that you were thinking or that made you think, okay, things need to change?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a few things over the years. I think, one of the biggest catalysts for me is, my marriage basically falling apart
Mm,
back in 2020, what year? 2019. So
okay.
pre-COVID, we had the baby, I had a baby, we were running the gym, and my marriage basically fell apart. And it was sort of like, why? My husband and I, we
Mm.
joke that we're on our second marriage or probably our third marriage at this point. We're still together, but there was a really hard, difficult time in my personal relationships where I had to kind of take a
Mm,
step back and be like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? What really matters? And so
yeah.
certainly that was one of them. A second big moment for me was during the pandemic. I ran a brick and mortar gym. We all know what happened in March of 2020. I
Oh, yeah.
was at the time 8 weeks pregnant with my now 3-year-old son. He'll be four this year.
Mm,
And for me, that really gave me a big moment of pause too, because we our gym was closed for quite a long time.
mm,
Here in Ontario, Canada, restrictions were very severe in terms of what you could
okay.
and couldn't do. And we made the
Mm-hmm.
decision at the end of 2020 to actually close our gym permanently because we knew that we didn't want
Wow.
to go back to, where we were in 2019 or 2018, struggling with our marriage and trying to build this business with
Yeah.
a baby. And it was just not a good
Mm,
situation. And so I think it's been like pieces over time, like
okay.
moments that
Yeah.
happen in my life that or not ideal, but there's always a lesson there and being able to just sort of get closer and closer and closer and also just looking at other mentors and looking at other women that I
Mm,
respect that are building families and building businesses and brands and
mm-hmm.
who are finding ways to do it. I tend to be a modifier by nature, so I love looking to see what other people do, what works for them, and then
Yeah.
adapting it for my own life.
I love that. And that reminds me of this specific post that I had seen. And I think it might have been that post where I had reached out to you to do this recording. And in it, you had said something along the lines of women or mothers need to stop looking to women without children for
Mhm.
business advice or something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah, I say that a lot. I say that a lot. I think it's just like you can't understand what it's like to be a mom running a business unless you're a mom
Mm,
running a business. And
yeah.
I could have bought a house with the amount of money that I've invested in mentorship over the years. I mean, I'm
Mm,
I'm 10 years into entrepreneurship. So I was an entrepreneur before I became a mom. But what I think about why I left my first mentor, I have this when I owned a gym, I had a mentorship
hmm.
and it was a man and he was lovely. But when I had my
Okay.
daughter, I remember being in a session with him and saying to him, I'm really struggling. There's like so
Mm,
much going on and I'm feeling overwhelmed and
mm,
there's all of these demands and I'm having a hard
yeah.
time. And he kind of just like was like, yeah, that's really hard. Let's look at your spreadsheet to see your targets and where we're at. And then we spent the
Oh
next
my
20
gosh.
minutes of him going over like all the ways I'm not doing enough. And I was just like,
Oh,
okay. And I think that I
wow.
canceled I think I was working with a mentorship group, and I think I, processed that for a couple of days, and then I just sent an email and I was like, hey, you know what? This isn't it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been many times where I've gone in, paid, thousands of dollars to be in rooms and masterminds
Yeah.
and receiving advice from someone who just doesn't know what it's like to be in
Mm-hmm.
my shoes. I received advice recently. I host a free community connection call every other Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. If you're
Okay.
listening, you want to join, please come. But I was talking about this in an event I was at, and the guy that was hosting the event was like, "Well, you need to do those more. You should do more of those." It's like,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I would like to, but it's not, that's probably all I've got right now in terms of like my
Yeah.
capacity. And he's like, "Well, you could do it at night." And I was
Mm.
like, "Do you want to come do bedtime at my house?" Like, I don't do you want to come put my kids
Yeah.
to bed? Because I'm sure that the other women that would be coming, I
Mm.
tend to serve moms, will also be doing bedtime. And so, there was a moment where it was sort of insinuated that I was being lazy
Mm.
when I was pushing
Wow.
back on this. And I was like, no, I'm not being lazy. I'm
Yes.
just being
Yeah.
realistic about, the 24 hours that I have. Meanwhile, this person that I'm talking to has no children, has all the money in the
Mm-hmm.
world, probably has someone cooking for them, doing laundry, cleaning, like all those other things that
Oh,
that I
yeah.
do. And so I think it's really important to filter your sources. And when I'm looking for mentorship,
Absolutely.
sorry, I'm losing my voice. When I'm looking for mentorship, I'm gonna hire a mom. If I'm going all in
Mm.
on that, like making a big investment and looking for someone to mentor me, it's because they are living a life that I want to live. And that starts with being a mom. It doesn't mean I'm not going to receive
Yeah.
advice from somebody that isn't a mom on like a certain subject. I'm happy to
Mm-hmm.
learn. But when we're talking about like actual mentorship, this is how you need to function in the
Mm-hmm.
confines of your life. Don't talk
Yeah.
to me unless you know what it's like to live even, an hour in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I completely agree with that because even in other areas, people who are not moms can't wrap their minds around what it really means to be a mom and all of the things that moms do, or I don't want to say have to do. I hate to say have to do, but all of the things that moms do,
Yeah.
it just shifts, it changes. Things change from zero kids to kids.
Yes. And I have to admit, like, I was that person that had no idea. I have this memory of my last corporate job. My boss
Mm,
was a single mom. And I was probably 25 at the time. And I remember, she'd come in late and she'd leave early, or she
mm,
wouldn't, she'd miss a bunch of days because so and so was sick. And I vividly remember thinking to myself, that must be nice. It must be so nice to get
mm,
to come in late and leave early because I'm here at the time I'm supposed to be here and I leave, and I resented her for it. I did. And I had no idea. And
mm,
now, I would apologize to her 1,000 times over because gosh, it's such an ignorant thing for me to think. But you
mm.
know, I didn't know better. And most people
Yeah.
don't, right? Like
Hmm.
you can't know unless you are a primary parent and you're managing the invisible load of motherhood and all of the
Oh, yeah.
things that are piled on with that. The stuff you don't even think about that other people don't have to
Hmm.
think about because you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
You just can't you can't get it. And it's not I've had people take offense to this. I've had
Mm,
people that wanted me to join their programs or looking to mentor me, and I've said like I'm really sorry but I
hmm.
can't hire you because you're not a mom.
Yeah.
And they're offended by that. They are truly offended.
Mm,
And it's not that they're not incredible people, it's not that I don't think that they can help me. It's just I know there's going to be a moment, at least one,
hmm.
probably 20, where I'm going to be coming to you for support that you actually can't give me because
Mm, yeah.
you don't know. And so
Hmm.
that's a really big piece of it that's really important to me. Actually, I run a mastermind myself, and just today, as we have a Voxer
Wow.
group, so like a chat, and just today, the over the last couple of days, the Voxer group has been really loud. There's been a lot of conversation from women who are
Mm,
struggling, and we're all having the same conversation. One woman sort of popped in and was like, "Hey guys, I know I haven't been here in a couple of days. I'm really having a hard time. I'm
mm,
putting all this pressure on myself. I'm trying to be the best at running my business and the best mom. And I feel like I'm failing in all of the things. And then bing, 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 all these other women
Wow.
pop in, right? And they're like, I could have sent the
Yeah.
same message. I'm feeling that too. And so,
Mm,
as a leader of the mastermind, of course I can echo those things. And then my thought is, okay, who can I bring in now to support better, right? What other
mm,
tools, who can I bring in to support us on these
yeah.
topics? And there were a bunch of, a bunch of different things that come up, but I think like that conversation doesn't happen. You're not
Mm-hmm.
getting that vulnerable if you're in a group with a bunch of, 20 something childless people that are
Yeah.
they're not going to hold space for
Mm-hmm.
you in the same way. And so it's just really
Yeah.
cool to see it happening. I mean, that's the reason that my mastermind exists. But even as we're having this conversation,
Mm,
like this is a conversation that I'm having this
yeah.
morning with the women in my community that are
Mm-hmm.
really, and it's not always fixable, right? There's not always an answer out of it,
No.
but at least knowing you're not alone, that you're not crazy, that, sharing
Oh,
strategies with one
absolutely.
another, things that you do, and kind of giving some permission, right? Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of it is like permission
Oh, yeah.
to maybe push a deadline, permission to play
Mm.
hooky for a day, to, take some
Yes.
pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
Remember that, it's about quality time with your kids, not necessarily quantity. Like all of those things
Mm-hmm.
um, is a really big part of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I really like the term permission
Hmm.
because I think that's what gets in the way of women and moms being able to take the breaks or move a deadline is they don't feel like they have the permission to do that. Or they feel like maybe they're going to get in trouble, or maybe they're not going to, this must mean they're not enough, or they can't hack it.
Yeah.
When that's not necessarily the reality. Your business and the way you frame your time is about you and your capacity, the amount of energy you do or do not have, and paying attention to those things.
Yeah, there's two sides of it. Like one of the things I find so interesting is I think moms are truly the most efficient people on the planet.
Mm.
Like I can get more done in 3 hours than most people can do in an entire day because you've
Yeah.
learned that, right? Like if you're a mom, you're managing so many things. And so, in my agency, all of my staff are moms because they're
Mm.
just wildly efficient human beings. And so I think there's like two sides of it, right? There are things that we can't always do the same way as other people.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I do think that when we simplify things, when we figure out what does work and then we double down on it, like there's so much that's
Mm.
available to you. Like I am the last person that will ever use motherhood as an excuse to not go after my dreams or to not achieve my goals.
Mm.
I'm also the first person to give myself grace in moments where, hey, that didn't go exactly how to plan because the norovirus just swept through my house over the last week.
Yeah.
I've been up to
Oh,
my elbows
yeah.
in vomit, right? Like those are things
Yes.
that are going to come up. But I also believe that like if you're a mom and you have a dream on your heart, you are the
Mm.
perfect person to pull it off because you're already
Mm.
capable of so much. Your bandwidth is massive. And some of the time,
Yeah.
we talked about imposter syndrome before we hopped on. Some of the
Hmm.
time it's just that. It's like the knowing that you're actually like worthy of that idea and that it is
Hmm.
for you, but you are going to have to do it another way than
Yeah.
maybe, Sally next door who or your other friend that you see online that doesn't have kids that has, 14 hours a day. I remember I hired a mentor early on in my business and she had I think she said she had 21 private clients and would spend two
Wow.
hours a day on Instagram doing engagement. And I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
both of those things are a no for me. I'll tell you that right now. I
Yeah.
will not be spending
Yeah.
2 hours a day on Instagram engaging with strangers. And 21
Yes.
one-on-one clients is far too many, more than I would ever. I also have small children. Those count for like 10 one-on-one clients each in terms of
Mm.
their capacity of like
Yeah.
what they require of me. And so
Yeah.
being able to look at another person and be like, okay, like that's great for you. Here's what I'm going to do that's going to be different. I think
Hmm.
is the key for a mom is like really figuring out what quote unquote strategy or tactic is going to
Hmm.
work for you. And then how can you maximize the effectiveness of that strategy? And sometimes we
Yeah.
joke in my mastermind, it's like, how can we do the bare minimum for the maximum result?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's all available to you.
Hmm. No, that's so funny. the bare minimum for the maximum results, because it's going back, what is that? The Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
that it's only like 20% of your effort produces like 80% of like whatever it is that you're doing, or something like that, something along those lines. So it's the bare minimum. You don't want to be working super hard. Like you don't have to work hard, like super hard, for you to be successful. It is really the working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, and most of us overcomplicate it. And I like it's important for me to admit to anybody that's listening, like I am
Mm.
the queen. I will make work for myself. I am the
Mm.
queen of making work for myself. I'm actually in the process right now of launching my community. And so by the time this episode comes out, I'm sure the community will be live or available. And so I have this Mother Means Business podcast. I have my This Mother Means Business mastermind, but I'm going to be launching
Mm.
this Mother Means Business community, a space for entrepreneurial mothers to come and just receive support in a really cost-effective way and be part of community. I think
Wow.
the one piece that I've seen is there, regardless of where you are
Mm.
in your entrepreneurial journey, there's this thread of loneliness that seems to exist for all entrepreneurial
Mm.
moms. Is it doesn't matter if you make
Yes.
50K a year, 10K a year, or $10 million a year, there's a loneliness factor. And so I've been
Yeah.
building this community for years without really knowing it.
Mm.
And so now it's time to formally launch it. But I was talking to my team about it just this week. And my intention initially, I was like, okay, I'm
Mm.
going to do a webinar and then I'm going to have the funnel and then it's going to funnel in. And then I had to take
Yeah.
a moment to be like, Laura, you have been building this community for 3 years. Like, you don't
Yeah.
need to do a webinar. Like, you just don't. Like, your people
Hmm.
are ready. And so even for me, I had to take a moment to be like, oh, you're right. And it was like a conversation,
Mm.
I'm having like my left brain, right brain conversation.
Yeah.
You don't need that. You haven't, that's not required. And even just having to check myself on, oh, that isn't
Mm.
required as I'm, about to write all of the webinar marketing emails and then the follow-up emails and the launch emails. I was
Yeah.
like, screw it, I'm just writing one set of emails and the people that want to come and be part of this community will, because they'll know that it's for them. And
Mm.
it's what I spent the last 3 years building building this part of my business. This just makes sense now. And so,
Yeah.
I'm the queen of making work for myself. I have to check myself relatively often
Mm.
because I don't want to be chained to my desk all day. I just don't.
Hmm.
And it's not
Yeah.
required. Yes, you need to work hard, right? I'm not going to tell you not to work hard. You should work hard, but you got to work smart. And so,
Yes.
yeah, it's something that I'm constantly checking with myself is how can I make this easier?
Hmm.
Where am I overcomplicating something that doesn't need to be complicated? And I think that
Hmm.
is, a big part of it.
Mm. Yeah. So what made you even think like, oh, I have to do this webinar? Was it comparison, or what was it for you?
Some of it is just like knowing how good marketing works, right? And we think
Hmm.
about usually you're doing a webinar, you're doing something to like nurture a person that
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
maybe on the fence, maybe, for something higher ticket. But truly for me, like when I think about my community, like it is the founders offers $47 a month. The amount of value is
Mm.
ridiculous. And my community's ready for this. Like I said, I've been building this Mother Means Business. The podcast has been out for over a year, but I've been having conversations around motherhood and entrepreneurship for 3 years on social media.
Yeah.
I have the email list. I have everything. So for me, it was just this, I think it was more of like, to your point, seeing what other people are doing to fill their
Hmm.
programs. And then also like knowing what email nurture looks like, right? The nurture process, moving somebody through
Hmm.
like awareness through to purchase. But I had to kind of just check myself and be like, no, everybody, like your people are ready for this
Yeah.
thing. Like I've been doing
Hmm.
these free community connection calls for a full year. Like we're ready.
Mm.
We're ready to take this. We've all been dating each other for the first little bit and like we're ready to go into a committed $47 a month relationship. So for me, it was a little bit of like just seeing what I know other people are doing, um, sort of
Mm.
telling myself stories about where my audience is really at and where my community's at.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that would be it.
Ha- And you said telling yourself stories of like where you're at and where your community is at. What helps you identify those stories for yourself?
Yeah. So one of these is one of my best skills actually is being able
Mm.
to hear a story and then to be able to fact a story. And so
Mm.
I'm a person that will tell myself a lot of stories. I think we all do, right? And whether
Yes.
it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
oh, who am
absolutely.
I? And even I think
Hmm.
launching this community is a great conversation point, because when I first had the idea of doing a community, I was
Hmm.
like, oh, there's so many communities. Like, who am I to like launch
Mm.
another one? Like,
Hmm.
who cares about me? And then it was like, no, lots of people actually, Laura. Like lots of people join my mastermind. They come to my retreats. They come to my events. They listen to my
Hmm.
podcast. Like I'm well aware that there's lots of people. Um,
Yeah.
and then also like be able to give myself permission that it's okay if it starts small and then it's going to grow over time. This isn't going to be, I'm not going to launch and have 1,000 people in my community, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. And so for me, it's often like hearing a story and being like, oh, and I will stop myself in the moment and be like, oh, that's
Mm.
interesting. Where's that coming from? Sometimes I write it down. Sometimes I'll just kind of sit with it. And for me, it was
Mm.
like, certainly with the community, it was like, who am I to do this? There's a couple other mom entrepreneurship communities that
Mm.
I'm aware of, but I wanted to do it differently. I wanted to do it my way. And
Yeah.
so for me, it really just comes down to, okay, that's an interesting story. My first thought is, whose voice is that? Whose story am I hearing? Like,
Mm.
where's that coming from? And
Yeah.
sometimes that's like, oh, that, maybe that's my mother, or it's like a childhood story coming through, or
Yeah.
maybe it's, some other person that I've been around. Maybe I'm just not around the right people.
Mm.
And maybe
Ooh, that's a good one.
somebody,
Yeah.
somebody was pouring their own self-doubt onto me and I'm triggering that. And
Hmm.
then really for me, it's like, what is true about this? What is the
Mm.
information? Like, to really fact a story is something that I'm really good at for myself and others, right? And my coaching
Mm.
clients,
Hmm.
they'll come to me like, hey, I'm telling myself this story, or this is my belief. And it's like, okay, like what's true about that? Nothing. Okay. If nothing's true about that story,
Mm.
then, what is the worst thing that could happen? What's the best thing that could happen? And really starting to think about, okay, what can we fact over top of this? Because 9 times out of 10, the stories we tell
Mm.
ourselves, whether it's, I can't do something, I'm not worthy of something, I shouldn't do that, it's not going to work, who am
Mm.
I to, any version of those are all just stories. And very rarely do we actually back fact up to those
Hmm.
stories.
Yeah. Do you connect that? Because you were talking about paying attention to what you're feeling within your body. Do you connect those stories to feelings? Is that also what helps you identify these stories?
Yeah, sometimes. So I have learned a little bit about human design. I'm not a human design expert.
Mm.
Don't pretend to be. I'm a manifesting generator, which would make sense if you go back to my bio. We're a little all over the place. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I am supposed to do as a manifesting generator is have a gut response to things.
Mm.
And so yes, I get a little like pang in my body. I'm also not a person that does well when I like make a decision and then impulsively act on it. I usually sit on it for a little bit.
Okay.
And it might just be a day or two. It doesn't have to be a long time.
Hmm.
For the people on my team, they think it's a very short time. So even for this community, I was like, it'll probably take me a while to figure it
Yeah.
out. And then, 10 days later, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. And they're all like, what? That was it? You only needed 10 days? Like, yes. But yeah, very much so. Like I can feel things in my body, what feels
Mm.
right, what doesn't feel right. And also, I think there is a little bit, it's important for all of us to have a little bit of like delusional or delulu belief about ourselves. Like it's required, I think, in order to
Oh
stay in
yeah.
entrepreneurship. Like you have to really believe that you're worthy of it.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
halfway through reading Jamie Kerlima's book, Worthy, which is I highly
Okay.
recommend
Oh,
reading for
I haven't
anyone
heard of
that,
it. Yeah.
yeah, it's called Worthy. It's by Jamie Kerlima, who's
Mm.
the founder of It Cosmetics. Really, really great
Oh,
book.
okay.
Talks about like confidence versus worthiness. So if you're a person that struggles with imposter syndrome or anything like that,
Mm.
or you think that you're not worthy of your big hairy goals, highly recommend the book. But I think that's a big piece. And like somewhere along the way, I just kind of decided that I am worthy of the things that I
Yeah.
desire. And so for me, that's just an inherent belief that I've been able to lock in there. It doesn't mean it doesn't get shaky
Mm.
every now and then. It does. But I kind of
Yeah.
can go back to that, right? It's like we are all worthy of the things that we desire, but you just have to decide.
Hmm.
So much
Yeah.
of success
Mm.
is just you deciding that it's time. that you're
Mm-hmm.
deciding you're going to do the things
It
that are
really
scary.
is.
Yeah. Like you're
Yes.
going to ask for what it is that you
Yeah.
want in the world. You're going to decide to do the thing that's scary. You're going to put that thing out there. You're going to put
Mm-hmm.
yourself out there, right? It's just largely a decision
Mm-hmm.
that enough's enough.
Yeah.
Let's go. And so I think for me, that's one thing that I've been able to do pretty well. And I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, so I'm
Mm.
pretty wired that that's just how it goes now. Um, and so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a muscle over time.
No, I'm really glad that you shared that and you brought that up because that also was something for me too in recognizing my own worthiness. And even when in the creation of this podcast, I had the idea for a while, but it really took me finally deciding I didn't have to have everything in place, everything perfect. I just had to start doing it. And that
Yeah.
started with me just deciding, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to start recording. I'm just going to do it and I'll figure everything out along the way. But if I
Yeah.
waited for everything to be in line, for everything to be, quote unquote, perfect, I might have not even ever started recording.
No, you would be waiting forever. And that was the same thing for me
Mm-hmm.
with This Mother Means Business when I launched the podcast. I was like, if one person listens, then that'll be great. Like if
Yeah.
episode one launches and one person listens. And I think within the first week, I had like 120 downloads on the first episode. And I was like, what is
Wow.
happening? Which, like to some people, that
Yeah.
might be a really small number, feel like a really small number. But to me, I was like, if I get one person,
Mm-hmm.
then okay, that's fine. And that's
Yeah.
that's kind of been an energy that I've tried to hold. I had a
Mm-hmm.
mentor early on talk to me about that. Is like just being in the energy of one person. If I can help one
Mm-hmm.
person, if one person listens to this podcast episode and gets something out of it
Mm-hmm.
and hangs on to one thing that I said, then this was so worth our time.
Yeah. Oh,
If
yeah,
one
absolutely.
if one person listens to my podcast episode, great. If one person reads the emails I send out every Tuesday, fine. I will write it for that one
Yeah.
person. And so if I've changed one person's life or helped one person on any given day, then I'd take it as a win.
That's awesome. That's such a great mindset to work off of because then
Yeah,
you
because
don't. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say like one becomes two, two becomes four, four becomes
Hmm.
eight. Like
Yeah,
that is
it all
how it
builds.
builds. I got a message
Hmm.
yesterday actually from a girl. I was like, I was on a call and I send emails every Tuesday. It was Tuesday yesterday to give away the recording date. But I got a message in my Instagram DMs that was like, hey, I was on a call that somebody brought up your email that you wrote this week. I was like, what? And then they started sharing the link about the email that I wrote. And I was like, who was it? I'm so confused.
Yeah.
The name of the person wasn't even a person whose name I recognized. I was like, that is
Mm,
wild to me
wow.
that you're on a call, like this person that's in my community
Yeah.
happened to be on a call with someone she doesn't know that she knows doesn't believe to be part of my community, said, hey,
Yeah.
you know what? Laura Sinclair wrote this email this week about this thing. You should check it out. And I was just, and she's telling me this, and my my brain is melting. I'm just like, is this
Yeah.
actually like, is okay? And I will be honest, like, I don't have a huge email list. I think I've got like maybe 700 people on my email list, which is big to some people, small to most, right? I don't have a
Mm,
10,000 person email list. And so it's just wild. When she told me this, I was like, this
mm,
is wild. And that's the energy of
yeah.
one person, right? It's like
Hmm.
one person who I haven't even connected with yet in a meaningful way to me, but I'm connecting with her in
Hmm.
a meaningful way, is then going and having conversations in rooms I'm not even in
Yeah.
about
Hmm.
an email that I wrote that she might be the only person who read it, and that's okay, right? I
Yeah.
know she's not because I can check my open rates, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just so that belief of like, I just need to help one person
Hmm.
really does continue to carry me. And I'm sure that it will for a very long time.
Mm. And I bet it also, I mean, from hearing that, it makes me also think, I bet that takes a lot of pressure off so that you can just let the writing flow, be able to say what you need to say instead of worrying about all of the people that you're trying to speak to.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. It takes the pressure off. And I won't pretend that there aren't days where I'm like, oh, not enough people are open my emails, or like I wish
Mm,
that I had more people in those offers, or my reel had better numbers, or whatever it is, right? There are still those moments where I'm like, oh, that sucks.
yeah.
But in the totality of the thing, yeah, it totally takes the pressure off because I know inherently because I've seen it so many times, like
Mm,
one becomes two and two becomes four. Like it really just does. And that's okay, right? Like it doesn't have to be this race. I think in the online space, there's a lot of rhetoric and narrative around, if you're not doing this quickly, if you're not getting to six
mm.
figures in 10 minutes, or you're not making sales every
Yeah.
single day, like you're failing. And I just don't like that's not
Mm,
it. That's not true. That's not real. That might be the
yeah.
reality for some people, but most people, there's a reason why 95% of business owners are making less than six figures. Like
Mm,
it's an astonishing number. Maybe it's 92%.
yeah.
It's a very low percentage. It's less than 10% of
Mm,
business owners are making six figures and less than 2% are making seven figures. And so, but if you
yeah.
spend any time scrolling on Instagram, you're going to believe that if you're not
Yeah.
making
Something's wrong
at
with
least
you.
$100,000 a year, there's something very wrong with you, which just
Mm-hmm.
isn't really true. And so,
Yeah.
for me, I think in this world where everything apparently needs to happen yesterday, it's important for me to like remember that for myself that
Mm,
good things take time and growing a business takes time, but also it's a big part of the conversations I try to have, my Instagram account and my
mm,
podcast, things like that is like things take time, but
mm-hmm. They
everything
do.
that you do is planting a seed that you don't necessarily know when it's going to bloom yet, but like know and trust that it will eventually.
Yeah. I love that. So you're about to launch your community,
Mhm.
and then you have an agency, and you said you have a mastermind. Can you talk
Yeah,
a little bit of each?
of course. So my brand, I'm moving the podcast, This Mother Means Business, really into a brand where everything
Mhm.
that I do will function under This Mother Means Business, aside
Mm.
from the agency and one-on-one coaching. That's just with me, whatever I do. So on the mentorship side of my business, I do one-on-one coaching. So I work with entrepreneurial mothers one-on-one to build their businesses
Mm.
and to build a business that, makes them a lot of money, but also doesn't sacrifice their sanity. And so
Yeah.
we play there in the one-on-one capacity. I run a mastermind, This Mother Means Business Mastermind. It was formerly called the Ambition Mastermind, but it is the This Mother Means
Mm.
Business Mastermind moving forward. And I run that twice a year. It's a 6-month mastermind. It's a combination of one-on-one coaching and group mentorship. I mentioned that
Mm.
we have a group chat that we're in all the time. It's really just a beautiful way for high-level women to come together and support each other, grow their business, collaborate, and get access
Mm.
to me and my resources and my support through that way. It's really about, navigating the duality that is motherhood and entrepreneurship.
Mm.
Then there's the community. So the founding rate for the community is $47 a month. I don't know
Okay.
what the timing will be or when this episode comes out, if there will be founding spots left or not. And then it'll go up to $67 a month and eventually $97 a month for the community. And that is just a really, really cool place for entrepreneurial moms to come together in a way that's really authentic and not everybody selling to each other and not
Yeah.
fluffy. I think that sometimes when we talk about motherhood and entrepreneurship, we end up having like really
Mhm.
fluffy conversations that lack depth, at least in my experience. And so I
Okay.
really wanted to create a place where we can have depth of conversation and receive support. So
Mm.
in the community, we have a monthly mastermind session where people come together on our monthly call. We break out into small groups and you can mastermind in the small groups and I'll kind of
Okay.
pop
Awesome.
in and out, which is amazing. We have a biweekly networking call. There's also a monthly workshop. So we're doing trainings as we build out our
Mm.
library on all the things. So from legal,
Yeah.
finance, marketing, emails, like
Mhm.
whatever it is, you need support with that. And then I host a yearly retreat. So in October 2nd to 4th, this year here in just north of Toronto, Canada, we're hosting the This Mother Means Business Retreat. It is for 10
Wow.
moms. At this point, it's 40% sold out. And it's a 3-day, 2-night retreat where we get
Mm.
together and we grow our businesses, we workshop our businesses together, but also relax and have some balance and chill out.
Yeah.
And we're doing some contrast therapy. We're bringing in Reiki. We're going to do
Mm.
a little bit of
Oh, wow.
exercise. We've got this
Mhm.
incredible facility. We're on 5 private acres. It's actually in one of Canada's largest log cabins, which I just love. It's a
Wow.
14,000 square foot log mansion. And
That's
we're on the
huge.
beach. It's going to be beautiful. So I'm really excited for that. And then because I don't have enough things, there's also my podcast, This Mother Means Business podcast, which we drop a new episode every Thursday. Sometimes it's guests, sometimes it's me. And then I have the social
Mm,
media marketing agency. So if you're in a season where you are looking to offload any of your digital marketing work, I can support with that too.
awesome. And how do people, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I love to hang out on Instagram. I'm at It's Laura
Mm.
Sinclair. If you made it this far in the podcast, we are officially friends. So feel free to send me a DM and say hello. You can also check out thismothermeansbusiness.com
Mm,
or laura-sinclair.com. And I'll make sure I get you all the links so we can put those in the show notes. But Instagram is the
yes.
easiest place to find me, or you can find me on my website.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for giving us your time today and all of your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.